أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وخاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعن الله الدائم على أعدائهم أجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Somebody who prayed. He's somebody who recited Quran. He's somebody who went for Hajj. He probably had a nice beard and many other nice things like that. From the outer, he seemed like he had the guise of a Muslim. But he was somebody who had been completely overtaken by shaitan. He wasn't a human being. And so Ayatul Bahjah warns us. He would say this on occasion, that we are Shimr bil Quwa, we are Yazid bil Quwa, we are Muawiyah bil Quwa. Bil Quwa means that you have a potential to be that being. And so we need to take heed of that. And we need to learn from the messages that our Imams have given us. So we've been exploring the 7 techniques that Al-Gharur makes use of to trap and to misguide human beings. Or in other words, the 7 games that he might play with us in order to take us away from the path of Allah. The first one that we covered yesterday was, just to recap, it was when we have a distorted view of reality, when we don't have correct beliefs. When this happens to us, then we act according to that. We looked at the example of, Zionists. How are they taught? What are their core beliefs that allow them to justify this level of atrocity and this level of dehumanization and this level of genocide and Holocaust? But we made a point there. We said that don't look at that and just scorn it and say that that has nothing to do with me. Because some of those same core approaches can somehow creep into our belief system as well. And just to kind of close off the discussion about that before we talk about the next step for today, I want to mention one thing. There is a beautiful sunnah that the companions of the Imams used to engage in, which is called Arud Deen. What that means is this. Arud Deen means the presentation of the deen. We have numerous traditions, and you can look this up if you want, if you're interested. There are numerous traditions where the great companions of the Imams, at certain times, they would go to the Imams, and instead of asking questions, of course they would do that as well, but in these cases, instead of asking questions, they would ask permission from the Imam to state their aqa'id. So they would be like, is it okay if I explain to you what my belief system is? And the Imams would give them that permission, and then they would start out from the beginning, that the core of my entire belief is predicated on the Tawheed of Allah. And then from there, they would talk about the Risala, and finally the Imama. But it's more than just words they were saying. They were talking about that belief system which they actually live by. Sometimes there's a difference between the slogan and between the actual practice, lived reality. But they would be talking about how they actually live and what they live by. And usually the Imams, in the narrations we have, there's numerous ones, But when you look at in general, when the Imams would hear this at the end, if they were happy, they would make a dua for that companion. They would say, may Allah have mercy on you. And they would say that هَذَا دِينِي وَدِينُ آبَائِي وَهَذَا مَا نُدِينُ اللَّهِ بِهِ, meaning that this is our religion. This is a non-ma'asum, but the Imam is telling the non-ma'asum that that path that you're on, this is our path. This is the path of our forefathers. And this is the path by which the path that we are taking to Allah. I imagine you had that honor of being given an audience with the Imam of your time, and you could do the same thing. And you were to go through all the different, issues that we have. Sometimes we have these conflicts. Like we have spouses, for example, they don't see eye to eye on something. How should they approach shared living? How should they make decisions when it comes to consumption? When it comes to saving, when it comes to expenses, what kind of home they should live in, how they should vacation or not vacation. All of that all goes back to some core beliefs, which is that what are we here for, right? What are we striving towards? And how does that translate into our practical actions? Now, one of the challenges we have in the time of the ghaiba is that we don't have that type of access to the Imam of our time to be able to do that. But do we just give up on the idea? No. What we try to do is, number one, we research, we learn, we study. We see, like, what is it that Islam, now we have so much research that we have treasures in terms of like guidance in form of books, websites, articles, apps that tell us, okay, this is the Islamic position. This is what Islam tells us. And we can sometimes then, if we're still confused, we ask, right? If I can just take a moment here, if I can ask you to please, for the brothers, come forward, because the brothers are coming in the back, and everyone, inshallah, recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
How best possible sleep, brothers. There's a lot of brothers outside waiting on me.
Allah salli Muhammad ali Muhammad. One of the most beautiful things that a couple can do is when they get into a point of a difference of opinion on something, right? Rather than it becoming a vicious battle, right, and struggle and a conflict, they say that, you know what? We have a perfect solution, which is let's take the path of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, right? It makes it easy. It's not my path or your path, it's their path, right? So what is that path? Well, is not successful in deceiving somebody through distorting reality for them, then he goes to the next game, which is called the game of taswif. Okay, taswif in Arabic means to postpone something that is to be done today for tomorrow. In English, the word that's used for it is procrastination. Procrastination is one of the things that I feel we don't talk about that much, but if we want to look at the importance of it, let me just give you one narration we have, which is found in Jami' al-Sa'adat, Mullah Naraki. He says that it's been narrated. He doesn't give a source for the narration, but it's coming from a good source. Inshallah, it's something that's coming from them. So you're seeing the planet in the sky, but it's actually 5 minutes ago when that happened. But now if you start looking at some of the constellations, like I'm not too good at constellations, but one of the things that I do personally recognize is the Big Dipper. I think some of you it's pretty familiar, right? The Big Dipper's stars are roughly speaking about 100 years in terms of the light that we're seeing from them. So we're actually looking at something in the sky that happened 100 years ago, because it takes 100 years for the light to travel from those stars to where we are. Okay? Orion's belt, that's another thing that I personally can recognize. It's pretty visible in the sky. That light that we're seeing from the Orion's belt, you know when it actually was emitted from those stars? Roughly speaking, about 1,000 years ago. Okay? And if you start using a telescope and you start using like really sophisticated devices, you can actually start to see things that took place 1,000,000 years ago, or even 1,000,000,000 years ago, right? It took place then, but we're witnessing it right now. And if you just think about this for a moment and you ask yourself, wait a minute, like, where is the past? Is the past just something that's gone? Right? It's completely past, and all we have is the present right now. The answer is actually no. Even in Allah's physical universe, He made it in a way that we still have some access to the past. Right? You look at your father and your mother, and you look at your grandparents, right? And you look at your children, and you see that somehow Allah Ta'ala has placed some of the past, right, even right in front of you now in the present. You go to a tree and you count the rings on the trunk of a tree. Every year it grows a ring, and you can see that the past is embedded in the present. You look at your DNA, the past is embedded in the present. Now, we look at our situation, okay? Yes, we're living in the present, but at every moment we have access to our past. And what happens now is that for some people, this past becomes a barrier for them to be able to go on in the future, right? One of the strong recommendations we have in our hadith is iyaka wa taswif, meaning stay away from postponing for tomorrow what's to be done today. But it becomes a problem, and some people aren't able to, right? They aren't able to get to those critical things they have to do. They can't submit that application for the job. They can't do their resume. They can't pay their bills, right? They can't get their homework done. That's on a just worldly sort of things, right? Worldly things, but if they're done for the sake of Allah, they become a type of ibadah, right? Or other things, right? They can't call up their, that mu'min that they cut off with and just make amends, right? They can't call up their parents sometimes, right? We have this issue. They can't call up their parents, right? Because of something that happened. They can't call up their brother, right? Because they cut off from them, and they would feel like, a little bit, no, he has to call me. No. Okay, we'll talk more about that, inshallah, at some other occasion. Or ibadah, right? When am I going to make up the qada prayers that I have? Do I have an understanding of that? When am I going to learn how to read the Quran in a proper way, right? So many things, right? So why is that? Why is it the case that we sometimes are not able to do what we have to do when we have to do it? One of the reasons is because the past becomes a hindrance, right? Some people, right, whenever they try to do something for the future, okay, what do Ahlul Bayt say? They say that use the past as an ibrah. Take heed of it, right? Just like when we're walking and we see the sky, we see the sun, we see those stars, right? We can take heed of it. It gives us some insight, right? The fact that we can see these things, it means that we still have something to do with the past. Take notice of it. But they also tell us, particularly, don't let the hum means the worry. Don't let the worry from the past be something that prevents you from doing something for your future. Okay, this is a very important instruction we have from the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Sometimes we need an opportunity to talk it through, right? So we find, we talk to somebody, say, look, these things are bothering me in the past, right? I want to talk this out. Fine, clear off your chest, right? So that you can go and do the things that you have to take care of. Now, when we're talking about the core reason for why some people postpone what they have to do, right? This is very much tied to the Islamic notion of responsibility, because when we're postponing what we have to do, that means that we're not doing what we're supposed to do, which is our responsibility. That's called taklif, right? One of the most important things for a Muslim, a believer, is to know their taklif, to know responsibility, and to perform their responsibility, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're going to be asked about, right? Did you do what you have to do? One of those responsibilities that tends to get procrastinated on and delayed in our communities, and I have to take, we have these precious times in these majalis where we have enough people here to we want to make sure that we cover some of those important topics. One of those is the issue of marriage. Okay? Now, sometimes when you talk about marriage from the minbar, there's a certain segment of the population that tunes out, right? They say that, okay, well, I'm already married, right? So this is not relevant to me, okay? Or they're like, okay, no, this is like way off in the future for me, so it's not relevant to me, okay? Or whatever, other reasons, right? I'm not interested or whatever it is. Brothers and sisters, I'm going to take about 5 minutes to talk a little bit about marriage because it's relevant. It's for everyone, okay? And by the end of it, I think you'll understand why. So don't just like tune out right now. This is for everyone. If you're a kid, if you're a parent, if you're a grandparent, this is for you, okay? Brothers and sisters, we have a marriage crisis in our communities. We have a marriage crisis in our countries. Okay, the age of marriage continues to get higher and higher. The percentage of people who are getting married gets lower and lower. The difficulty that people are having in terms of finding a spouse is becoming greater and greater. Okay, we need to look at this because after all, if we're talking about responsibilities and not postponing them, not procrastinating on them, one of them is that of marriage itself. Right? Marriage is one of the most important responsibilities that a person has in their lives. Right? If you look at the Quranic spirit, the Quranic message is that yes, you can lead your life as a single individual, and yes, you can, perform your responsibilities to God as that. But the desirable state, the ideal state, is that you are part of a unit which is called a family. Okay? Let me, inshallah, quote an ayah from the Quran. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وزكريا إذ نادى ربه ربي لا تذرني فردا وأنت خير الوارثين. Remember Zakaria when he calls out to his Lord, "Oh my Lord, do not leave me alone, like as an individual, and you are the best of those who inherit." فَاسْتَجَبْنَا لَهُ, we responded to him. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ, and we granted him Yahya. وَأَصْلَحْنَا لَهُ زَوْجَهُ, and we righted his spouse. إِنَّهُمْ كَانُوا يُسَارِعُونَ فِي الْخَيْرَاتِ, they were those who hurried in good deeds. وَيَدْعُونَنَا رَغَبًا وَرَهْبًا, and they would call upon us with desire and with fear, with hope and fear. وَكَانُوا لَنَا خَاشِعِينَ, and they were humble towards us. Brothers and sisters, this ayah describes the qualities of an ideal family. Okay? And it uses the example of a prophet. Prophets are examples, they're role models. It says that a prophet of God, his dua, his request from Allah was that I don't want to be alone. I want to be part of a unit, right? And that unit should have certain qualities. What are those qualities? Is that they should be together as a group, striving and hastening towards performing of good deeds. Second of all, is that they should be constantly making dua. They should have a connection with Allah, right? And the third one, an emotional connection with Allah, filled with fear and hope. And the third one is that they should be humble. They should lead humble lives. They should lead modest lives, right? This is what the Quran describes for us as a pattern for how we should live. We spend our whole year, right, remembering the Ahlul Bayt, the family, right? The family is important. Why is it that sometimes it's so hard for people to perform their responsibilities when it comes to getting married, right? This is something we need to look at and examine, and we can't tackle this topic sufficiently in just a few minutes from the minbar in Muhurram. But at least I want to mention a few of those core things that become barriers for people to perform their responsibilities. Number one is when we have beliefs which are not grounded in Islamic principles. One of those things that we sometimes do is that we take Islam and then we superimpose these additional constraints and rules that come from other sources. Okay, now sometimes it's not in conflict with Islam. We call it culture that is compatible with Islam. Fine. Sometimes it becomes a barrier for the Islamic responsibility to be performed. I'm going to give you some examples. Sometimes people, when it comes to marriage, they have certain numbers in mind. Okay? And I hear this from the youth. My parents have said that until I'm 25 years old, right, I will not even be able to even speak about marriage in the household. Okay, brothers and sisters, where is 25 mentioned in a hadith? Can somebody show me that hadith which says 25 is the day or the age? Okay? We don't have that, right? Sometimes it's like, no, my parents have told me until I finish my university degree, I'm not supposed to even think about marriage. Okay, where is that mentioned in the advice of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim assalam, that somebody has to finish the university before they get married? Okay? Sometimes it's like this, no, my older sibling must get married before I'm even to be able to, be considered eligible for marriage. Okay, again, right? I understand why it's the case that there's some concern if the older sibling were to not be married and the younger sibling were to get married. But does that, if you look at the importance of marriage and the spirit behind marriage, should this become a barrier where somebody says that firmly no, until the older sibling gets married, the younger sibling is not going to get married? Again, when you look at the importance of establishing a family and Islamic guidelines are in this, that's not what it is. What does Islam teach us? Islam teaches us that, look, this is a responsibility. If you have the maturity and you're able to fulfill those responsibilities of marriage, then whatever age you are, if those conditions are placed, you are eligible for marriage. It could be 18. It could be 25. It could be 30, right? It doesn't matter. The point is, age is a number. What matters is those conditions, right? What matters is those qualities where somebody can get married. Sometimes there are things that are imposed. For example, on the issue of Sayyid and non-Sayyid, right? Now, I have all respect for, the respect that we give to Sayyids. Of course, this is something which is commanded to us in our religion, right? Because of the love we have for the family of the Prophet. But brothers and sisters, our Maraji, Ayatollah Sistani. Ayatollah Sistani is a Sayyid. Okay, Ayatollah Sistani, many people do taqlid of Ayatollah Sistani. Okay, and right, these are very important things for us. Other sources, right? These are very important things for us. Other sources, and we need to look at those and say that, look, this is how I was. And we need to look at those and say that, look, this is how I was taught. But is it correct or not? I was taught, but is it correct or not? Maybe if I look at it and re-examine it in the light of Islamic teachings, I will revise my opinion. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Furthermore, brothers and sisters, the barriers that we sometimes create are around the expectations that we have. Some people see that there are marriages that suffer, right? They're struggling. For example, sometimes younger siblings come and they say that, oh yeah, I saw that my older sister, my older brother, they went through some tough times, right? So I don't want to go through that. I'm not interested in getting married. Okay? Brothers and sisters, we need to make sure that we set the expectation correctly here. Marriage is not supposed to be a walk in the park where everything just falls into place and everything is fine and dandy and there's no issues that occur. I mean, come on, right? You have two people who are created with different personalities, with different tastes, right? And suddenly they're being told, okay, come together and live under the same roof and make it work, right? Obviously, there's going to be some areas of, friction. Obviously, there's going to be some areas where there's going to be, this different opinions, difference of whatever, okay? But that's okay. That's part of, establishing that shared life. It's part of the growth that needs to happen as part of marriage. And we need to make sure we have this type of education. They say that in the secular world, they say that if couples go through premarital counseling, meaning that they learn about the tools of having a successful marriage, even from their perspective, there's like a 30% chance of greater success in their marriage, right? That's when it comes to secular tools. Imagine if we had this culture that you learn the Islamic principles before you get into it. And then afterwards, we need to support. We need to have a support system in the communities where it's not a stigma. Because you go and get help doesn't mean there's something wrong with your marriage. In fact, imagine you have a nice new vehicle, right? What do you do with it? Do you just take it from the dealer and you never go back again? No, you take it back once in a while. You make sure that everything's okay. Tune up here and there. That's going to prolong the longevity of the vehicle. The same thing when it comes to marriages. We need to sometimes go and Just say, this is what's happening. What do you think? Are we doing things the right way? There's no stigma around it. It's a good thing to actually get advice on the health of one's marriage. This is how we can, inshallah, start changing the culture around this important responsibility. Please recite salawat ala Muhammad wa Again, the technique that we're talking about, the game that shaitan plays with us, is known as tasweef. Tasweef means to procrastinate. I gave some examples of different areas that we procrastinate in. Sometimes it's around the important thing of marriage, and sometimes that's not because of the person, it's because of their family members, or because of the community not allowing them to perform their responsibility. Sometimes it's on matters of the dunya, sometimes it's matters of the akhirah, sometimes it has to do with the need for self-improvement. Brothers and sisters, as we're going through these nights and days of the first 10 days of Muhurram, one of the questions that all of us, I'm sure, are asking ourselves is that, what are we doing to be on the path of these shuhada? Right? What are we doing in terms of striving for that high level? Right? So as we need to be looking at ourselves and asking ourselves that, am I taking those steps and striving in that way? Just as an end to this portion, before I begin the Masaib, I want to share with you a story which is found in the Mathnawi of Rumi. He's talking about this concept of tasweef, or the procrastination. He says once there was a young man who planted a bush. Maybe he thought it would be like a nice bush which would grow flowers, but it turned out to be nothing more than a thorn bush. Now, a thorn bush, if you go near it, right, it pokes you, it scratches you. It doesn't have any beauty to it. But it is what it is. It's one of the creations of Allah. He planted the thorn bush, and people started to notice the thorn bush. It was right in the middle of their path, and they got annoyed. Why? Because when they would walk by it, they would get scratched. When they would walk by it, their clothes would get caught on the thorns, and their clothes would get ripped, and their feet would start bleeding. So it became an issue. The governor of that town comes to the young man and says that, why don't you, uproot the thorn bush? And he says that, maybe tomorrow. So every day comes and he's supposed to do it, but he says, maybe tomorrow. And he doesn't do what he's supposed to do. And the thorn bush grows and grows, and he gets older and older. And finally, the governor comes back to him, and he says that it's been so long. Every day you put it off. Now look at the thorn bush and look at you. You've gotten so old, and this bush has thrived. It's become so young. It's filled with life. It's green. It's growing. It's age, and this bush has taken root. If you're not aware of all the harm that it's caused others, other people have suffered because of it. Other people have been waiting and been just struggling because of the presence of this bush. At least look at yourself. What have you done to yourself because of this bush right here? How many times have you scratched yourself on it? Be a man and be like Ali. And this is what Rumi said. Be like Ali alayhi salam. When he lifts the gate of Khaybar, go and take that bush and uproot it. Or do something to connect with Rasulullah and turn the bush into a rose bush. Right? This to do is to put off the most important work, the most important thing. What is that most important thing? Is it, let's say application I need to do for that extra position or get that raise or like that? All that has its own place of importance. But that thing we really need to do is that step that we need to take towards Allah Ta'ala. Right? And the time is now, not tomorrow. May Allah Ta'ala help us to understand our responsibilities and to perform them. Please say salawat ala Muhammad wa ala khams. Tonight is the third night of the month of Muhurram. We remember the shahada of a very dear companion on this night. We can say in some ways he was among the first of the shuhada related to the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam and the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. When the Kufans had written to Imam Hussein alayhi salam saying that we need you to send us somebody who can be our leader. Imam Hussein looked at his companions and he found that the only one who would be fitting for this purpose was none other than his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil. Imam Hussein alayhi salam sends him as his messenger, along with a letter introducing Muslim. He says that, بَعَثْتُ إِلَيْكُمْ أَخِي وَابْنَ عَمِّي وَثِقَتِي مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي Muslim ibn Aqil. I am sending to you who? He is my brother. He is my cousin. But even beyond that, he is my thiqa, meaning that he is the trustworthy one from the Ahlul Bayt. He is the spokesperson for the Ahlul Bayt. And I'm sending him to you as your guide. When Muslim went to Kufa, we know the story. But brothers and sisters, let's think about this. Here we have the one who was declared as the representative of the Imam to the people. And initially, they welcomed him. Thousands rallied behind him. Thousands pledged him support. But when Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad came into Kufa and the situation changed, and now the pressure was put on, we see who was left among the true believers. Muslim ibn Aqil says to them, let's go and rally. Let's fight against Ubaydullah. Among the 18,000 who had pledged, only 4,000 remain. And throughout the day, they begin to peel off. He leads the prayers in the masjid, and behind him, there are only a handful. And now Muslim ibn Aqil, on this night, which was the night of the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, we see that when Muslim ibn Aqil turns around after finishing their Isha prayer, he sees that there's no one left to support him. Muslim has been abandoned by every single one of them. He is alone. He's walking the streets of Kufa. And it is this point that we see that Muslim is marching towards his shahada. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka wa ala al-arwah allati حلت بفنائك. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon you, O Master of Martyrs, O beloved Imam Hussein, and upon those noble companions who are buried with you. Peace and blessings of Allah be upon Muslim ibn Aqil and Hani ibn Urwa. Muslim ibn Aqil is walking the streets of Kufa in the night time. There's no one to take him in. Finally, he finds a home where the old lady says that, yes, you can stay here this evening. Muslim ibn Aqil is eminently aware of what fate befalls him tomorrow. He makes his wudu, he begins to worship Allah. He is deep in munajat and remembering Allah. The lady comes to him and says, will you not sleep? He says, how can somebody who's preparing for his death find some sleep? The next day, the enemy soldiers discover where Muslim is being housed. Muslim gathers his army, he readies his sword. One man against so many, he fights so valiantly. But eventually they take him prisoner. They take him to Darul Imara. Muslim ibn Aqil is injured, he is wounded. He knows that what his end will be. The enemy is surrounding him. One of them sees that Muslim ibn Aqil begins to weep. There are tears coming from his eyes. He asks Muslim, oh Muslim, at this time, are you feeling weak? Are you feeling scared? I would have thought that you were stronger than this to be weeping when you know you are going to die. Muslim rebukes him. He says, no, it is not for myself that I am weeping, but my tears are for my master Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and for his family and what may befall them. They are coming to Kufa, but if they only knew how they had betrayed me here. Muslim ibn Aqil is readying for his death. They march him to the edge of the balcony. Muslim ibn Aqil turns his head towards where Imam Hussein alayhi salam may be. His last words are, Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. This is what his heart is filled with, the thought of his master, his Mawla, Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Muslim ibn Aqil's head is severed, but after that, the body is thrown down. But they didn't just stop at severing the head of Muslim ibn Hani. They wanted to make an example of them. They took their bodies and they dragged them through the streets of Kufa. Don't ever rebel against the Khalifa and the Khalifa's representative. And they did for the first time to Bani Hashim. They took the body of Muslim and they crucified it and they put it near the gates of Kufa so that everyone be warned of what the fate befell someone like Muslim ibn Aqil. Imam Hussein alayhi salam's caravan is going towards Kufa, but they receive a messenger. The messenger has some news. Suddenly they see that Imam Hussein alayhi salam begins to weep. He cries out, Rahimallahu Muslima. May Allah have mercy on Muslim. What a great companion he was. What a great believer he was. But then some narrations say that Imam alayhi salam looks at the camp. He looks at those who are there. He sees the sons of Muslim. He says that, how are you now? Your father gave a sacrifice. You can leave now. They say that we will never leave your side, Ya Hussein. And then he sees the daughter of Muslim. He says, bring her to me. She was also his niece. He takes her into her hands. He begins to stroke her head. She says that, why are you stroking my head like this? I only see those who are orphaned, that their heads are stroked like this. Has something happened to my father? Oh, my master. Imam Hussein says that, oh, my daughter, do not worry. Do not worry. I will be your father. My sister Zainab will be like your mother. And you, my sons will be like your brothers. We will be here with you. But we have to tell this daughter of Muslim that you should be strong. You should know that there will come a time soon where Hussein will not be there and Hussein's sons will not be there to be with you. Instead, you'll be dragged with chains on the desert sand. And if you even go out of line, they will poke you with their spears and they will hit you with the spears as you are taken towards Sham. Allah la'natullahi ala al-qawmi al-zalimin wa sayalamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalabin yanqalibun. Mahdi Hussein.